They laughed at her when she first arrived. To them, she was nothing more than a burden, someone who slowed the group down, someone who didn't look strong enough to survive. They whispered behind her back, calling her deadweight, and acted as if she was lucky just to be allowed to stay. She never argued, never defended herself. She just kept her head low, moving quietly, as though she carried a secret the others could never imagine. The days dragged on, and while the group grew impatient with her silence, she noticed every detail they overlooked: the flicker of shadows in the trees, the faint echo of footsteps when the world around them was supposed to be still. She saw more than they realized, but still, they ignored her. It wasn't until that night, when fear tightened around their camp like a noose, that everything changed. The fire burned low, throwing long shapes across the ground, and the sound of approaching danger silenced even the boldest among them. The others froze, their voices stuck in their throats, and for the first time, all eyes turned to her. That was when one of them saw at her wrist, partly revealed as her sleeve slipped back. Not a scar, not an injury. A code etched deep, like it was meant to be hidden until the right moment. The whispers stopped instantly. Their mocking stares shifted to shock, then fear. They had no idea what it meant, but something about the numbers, the precision of it, sent chills through their veins. She noticed their faces pale, their bravado vanish, and she slowly rolled her sleeve higher, as if daring them to keep looking. For the first time, she raised her eyes and spoke, her voice steady and calm. The air felt heavy, as if the night itself leaned in to listen. They had called her useless. They had underestimated her. But the truth was finally in front of them, and it was something far darker than they could comprehend. And just as the silence grew unbearable, the code on her wrist seemed to pulse under the firelight, leaving them frozen in place, unsure whether she was their greatest hope or their greatest threat. No one dared to move. The group that once sneered at her now sat in uneasy silence, their eyes locked on the strange markings carved into her skin. It wasn't a tattoo. It wasn't decorative. It looked like a sequence, precise and deliberate, the kind of thing that didn't belong to chance. Some of them leaned closer, squinting as if the firelight might reveal more. But each second only made their unease heavier. She lowered her sleeve slowly, almost as if testing them. Nobody spoke, but everyone was thinking the same thing. Who was she really? She had never given them her full name, only saying enough to keep their questions away. They assumed she was weak because she kept to herself, always quiet, always trailing behind. Yet now, her silence didn't feel like weakness at all. It felt like restraint. One of the older men finally broke the silence, his voice trembling despite the tough mask he wore. "That code, where did you get it?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she glanced toward the dark forest, her eyes scanning the shadows like she was listening for something only she could hear. The others shifted nervously, the fire crackling between them, reminding them how small and fragile their circle of safety really was. When she finally spoke, it wasn't an explanation. "It's not where I got it," she said quietly, her tone carrying more weight than any of them expected. "It's what it means." The words sank into the air, heavy and unfinished. Nobody knew whether to press her further or leave it alone. But they couldn't shake the feeling that their survival, maybe even their fate, was now tied to whatever secret she carried. And in the distance, a sound echoed, faint but growing closer, as if the night itself was answering her warning. The fire hissed as a log cracked in two, sending sparks spiraling upward, but no one looked away from her. The silence stretched, pressing against them like an unseen weight. Every person in that circle wanted answers, but no one knew how to ask without revealing their own fear. The code on her wrist wasn't just strange, it felt dangerous, like it carried a history they were never meant to see. She sat back, her face half-shadowed, and for the first time since joining them, there was a trace of something unreadable in her eyes. The group remembered how she never fought for food, never argued over rations, never reacted when insulted. Now those memories felt different, as though her quietness had been deliberate. A way to keep something buried. A younger woman, braver than the rest, finally whispered, "Is it military?" Her voice cracked on the last word, and the question hung in the air. It wasn't far-fetched. Those numbers looked too exact, too cold, to be random. The idea that she had once belonged to something bigger, something secret, sent a shiver through the group. But the girl didn't answer. Instead, her gaze lingered on the tree line beyond the fire, where the shadows seemed to shift unnaturally. Her fingers brushed against the edge of her sleeve, almost protectively, as though covering the code could somehow hide them from what was coming. The others exchanged worried glances. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a branch seemed louder. Now, they weren't sure if the real threat was out there in the dark or sitting right beside them. Her silence was no longer comforting. It was a warning. And the more they tried to understand her, the more they realized that knowing the truth might cost them more than ignorance ever could. The night deepened, and the forest seemed to press closer around them. Every crack of a branch or flicker of movement in the shadows made the group flinch. The fire that once felt warm and safe now felt too small, too fragile to protect them from what might be lurking just beyond its glow. She sat still, her eyes fixed on the darkness, her posture calm in a way that unsettled the others. It was as if she knew exactly what was coming, but refused to say it aloud. The older man who had spoken earlier shifted uneasily, his hand tightening on a broken piece of wood he had been using as a makeshift weapon. "If there's something out there," he muttered, his voice low, "we need to know. If you're hiding something, you're putting all of us at risk." His words trembled with fear, but also anger, the kind born from not understanding. She turned her head slowly, her expression unreadable. For a heartbeat, no one dared to breathe. Then, without answering, she stood. The movement was enough to send a ripple of panic through the group. Some scrambled to their feet, others leaned back as if distance would protect them. But she wasn't threatening them, at least not yet. She simply raised her hand, pointing toward the trees where the shadows swayed unnaturally. And then they all heard it. A faint rhythm, too steady to be the wind, too deliberate to be an animal. The sound grew clearer with each passing second, measured steps, approaching. The group's fear turned sharp, but she remained still, her wrist now fully exposed to the firelight. The code etched there seemed to pulse, reflecting the flames. Her voice finally broke the silence, calm but heavy. "It's not me you should be afraid of," she said, her eyes never leaving the dark edge of the forest. "It's what the code calls." The air thickened, hearts pounded, and the fire crackled louder than ever, as if the world itself was bracing for what was about to step out of the shadows. The group's fear clung to the air like smoke as the sound from the forest grew louder. Every step echoed with intent, to measured, to be chance, to steady, to be human panic. The girl didn't move, didn't blink. Only watched the shadows with the same quiet focus she had carried since the beginning. But the others could no longer contain themselves. A few backed away from the fire, clutching stones or sticks, there. Breaths sharp and uneven then. Just when the tension felt unbearable, the footsteps stopped. Silence swallowed the clearing, heavier than before. The group exchanged frantic glances, whispering half-formed questions, but she remained still, her wrist illuminated in the glow of the fire. The code shimmered faintly, almost alive, without warning. A sound split through the night, not footsteps this time, but a metallic hum, low and vibrating, like machinery hidden deep in the trees. The ground trembled ever so slightly, and the group's fear turned into raw terror. Nothing natural made a sound like that. "What did you bring here?" someone whispered, their voice breaking. But she didn't answer. Instead, she closed her eyes, as if she had been waiting for this moment all along. That was when the second twist revealed itself. From the opposite side of the forest knot, where the steps had come from, another noise rose, softer but equally chilling. It wasn't mechanical, it was a voice. It's a child's voice, faint and echoing, calling her name. The group froze, their panic doubled. Two threats closing in from different directions, and only she seemed to know why. When she finally opened her eyes, there was no fear in them, only certainty. "The code doesn't just call them," she said quietly, her tone sharper now. "It chooses who survives." The fire sputtered as if the night itself recoiled, and the group realized they were no longer just waiting for danger. They were caught inside something far larger, something they couldn't control. The clearing pulsed with tension as the two sounds closed in the heavy, mechanical hum on one side and the faint, haunting voice of the child on the other. The group was frozen, caught between flight and disbelief. Their weapons of stone and wood useless in the face of whatever was about to step into the firelight. She, however, stood tall, her wrist exposed, the strange code glowing faintly as though answering the darkness itself.